So today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast, my guest is Noa Ronen. Noa is a speaker, certified coach, author, vlogger, disruptor, and coffee lover. She brings more than 20 years of experience in change management, human resources, project management, and coaching. Noa encourages progressive leaders and social leaders to never settle on the norms so they can create the change they desire. Noa is here to share the story of the first time she walked on the Brooklyn Bridge. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, Anne. Nice to be with you.
All right, I'm very excited to hear your story. So let's
Me
go.
too.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and let's frame your story. Give us a little bit of the backstory of what brought you to New York, what was happening in your life, and then take us to that day that you found yourself on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh my gosh, I can see it. I can definitely see that day. But before getting to that day, it's starting to fade away. But I do have an accent. I in my head it sounds more than I think people hear that now. But I'm originally from Israel, and in the last 15 years, I live in the U.S. and actually voted in the last few rounds of, we are just had the election, right? So it was fun to be part of it. And 15 years ago, my husband got a job offer to move to the US. He's in the IT space. And I, before the move, worked in human resources, training and development, and change management consulting. And that's the paradox in the story that you will hear in a moment. I helped a lot of people and organizations go through change. And it wasn't easy because I was just starting to work in a new company, excited to move from being a consultant to working as a human resource engineer in that company, taking them through an exciting transition that I was excited about. And then my husband got that offer. And so it wasn't like, I'm excited to move. It was actually, is that the right opportunity right now with two kids under 2 years old? Right? So I made a decision that as a system, as a family, it's the right choice for our family, but it doesn't mean that I was mature in that decision. I was behaving at my best in that decision. And that's how we ended up living in Brooklyn, New York City, which became, I don't know if you had the opportunity to get to Brooklyn in the last few years, but it became very hip and very fun and actually very child friendly. So we moved there with two little kids and I was lost. I loved Brooklyn, but inside I was lost. And one of my biggest challenges was English. We do speak English in Israel, but it was my second language. And from being the leader, the influencer that when I open my mouth, I influence CEOs and C-suite executives. And I was in my 20s when I was doing that job, getting into that executive job in my early 30s. Suddenly I open my mouth and people don't really understand what I'm saying. And again, it wasn't like I couldn't speak English, but in my head, it felt like I am handicapped, that this
Yeah.
obstacle is big and it got in my
And you can't
way.
express yourself as easily in a second language as in your
I
first.
thought I thought I could, but apparently it wasn't the way, and when you have your first language and then you speak in your second language, and for me, the training and consulting and facilitating conversation and sitting in boardrooms and facilitating conversations and influencing processes and influencing people and inspire them, suddenly you feel so stupid. And that was my experience. And in that space, moving from being a working mom, suddenly I am in a very small apartment. So it was like also feeling like I'm in a good place in my life, living in a big apartment, two cars in Israel. Suddenly I'm moving to this really small space. Um, Not an amazing, you know, experience. Suddenly at home with two kids, the container is on the way, so the kids were eating on a box of the TV, the 42 inches TV box, right? It was like, what's going on in my life right now? I was one day executive, and then the next day, what?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
you are alone. What people don't know about relocation, it's like, oh my gosh, she's telling us that she moved to the Big Apple, New York City, such an exciting city, right? And it is. I love New York City. Like, just if I can hop on a plane right now and during this pandemic and go there, I will go. I love this city, but I felt so lonely. And what people don't know about relocation is that relocation can be a very isolating experience. Suddenly, from having all your friends, family, especially in a country like Israel that is a tribal culture, suddenly you are on your own with two little kids. Your husband is working because he needs to show that the investment in him will show the return, right? And when he comes home, you don't want to complain because he has enough. And I work now with many expatriates, so I know their partners many times have that experience of, I'm alone all day. Suddenly, I'm not working, and um, I don't want to put my burden on my partner, wife, husband, doesn't matter. So it's very lonely, very, very lonely. And that's where I was with kids, not working, feeling lonely, in a new country, new city, feeling that I am not that capable anymore.
Mm.
So that's how it started,
Oh,
and
wow.
so that's the background.
Yeah, I think anyone who's experienced any portion of your story knows
Mhm.
how that's a lot of change. And that's a tremendous weight to, and a lot of emotions. It's just,
Yeah,
and making sense of all of that and finding yourself. And you try and embrace it, but at the same time, it is just so
yeah.
much change. So then what happened? What made the Brooklyn Bridge such a significant like
Yeah.
pivot for
So,
you?
it's interesting because now that those are the questions that I'm asking my clients, right? What brings fun into your life? And my husband, since we've been before in New York City, my husband saw that I'm miserable, and there is the saying, happy wife, happy life. So he and I came up with the idea that at least twice a week, I will have a babysitter that will come and be for a few hours with the kids, and I will just go on adventures. I will just go on adventures to walk in the city, see new places, just be alone without the kids, because again, two little kids under 2 years old is intense, especially again when you are still on your own and trying to establish social life, which takes a while. And and that's what I did. I brought the babysitter, and I just took myself and started going on those little adventures. And until this day, those little adventures are my fun experience when I go to different cities. Even when I live now, it became kind of like a thing of mine. It started as a person that likes to control a lot of things. And you probably can hear that from the story, right? I try to control the change in many different ways. Um, I started with planning those adventure mornings, but then I decided for some reason to let my intuition to lead my way, and let myself, just when I feel hope out of the subway, just do that and have fun with that. So that became kind of like a thing and a theme of my of what I do and how I do things when I explore. And that when one day I decided to just hop and walk on Brooklyn Bridge. And it was a beautiful day. It was a bit, I think it was the fall, like today. So it was a bit starting to get a bit chilly in Brooklyn, but still it was a beautiful day, sky blue. So everything is open. You can see clearly the Statue of Liberty. You can see some ships, some little, helicopters, whatever it is around there. The city, Brooklyn, which I love, the city, which I love from both sides. And that openness and beauty of that bridge that touched my heart in a way that I have tears when I say it. You can probably see that, but it was a very emotional moment for me. And you mentioned emotions. There are a lot of emotions when you go through a relocation. What many people don't know is that when we go through change, um, we experience grief. And I didn't know that I experienced grief. I experienced grief, which is, when we think about grief, we think about, the person that passed away and that our sadness for that. But what really happens in this when we experience grief is that we need to redefine who we are without that person. And that's the experience of grief. And we experience that no matter if it's a positive experience or change or something that is less positive, it's the same experience to define who am I right now after this change. And that's what happens in relocation. Even though you're moving and you're excited, I now need to redefine who I am without my family, without my work, without my title, without my language, my first language, right? I need to redefine who I am. And that moment for me was such a crucial moment because it felt like there is something, and there are all those things that I understand now that I didn't understand then. But there was that moment of there is connection between my past, my present, and my future. And there was this openness because it felt like I can't see nothing. I don't know where I'm heading. I don't know what's going to happen in my life. Everything is shuffling for me. And suddenly there is that openness, that freedom to think in the way I want to think, and just standing there still while I felt so many times restless and not having a sense of peace. There was a moment of tremendous peace at heart that I experienced in that moment. And it was so big. I remember texting that there was still the old phones, but I texted my husband, letter after letter and telling him, this is the first time I'm happy in New York City. And I'm not sure if it was happiness or joy. I think it was more of a sense of joy now when I can put more words into that. And I believe part of it is that I knew what to do with the emotions and the thoughts in a way that I could not do before.
Wow. So that's such a significant, amazing moment to find. So what, like, to you now that you look back, was it because it was such because you said openness, so it sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
you had felt like all the change and things closing in, it felt like all of a sudden your world
Yeah.
reopened back up, and you could see that this is a good place to be, that can be filled with potential if I choose to see it that way.
Yeah, I will try to explain that. Sometimes when I will take that to a coaching example, okay? Sometimes when I coach people, they are so stuck on their perspective that I will ask them to stand or to change a chair or to look at the window or something to change their perspective. Because we're so stuck, we see things from what we see, and we don't realize that we do that. And during that time in my life, i I was stuck with looking at myself as the victim of the story.
Mhm.
I looked at myself as a um, you know I am the one losing in this experience. um, I was not able to look beyond, as I talk about it today. And that moment of standing there on the bridge, it was a moment of stillness. If you think about the bridge, at least there are a lot of thoughts that come into my mind when I'm telling the story right now, is that this bridge stands there still for so long, and I missed that grounding experience. I was restless. I was so much in my head with tons of what should I do? How should it look like? What's next for me? What is the thing? Like what? It's not worry, but it's trying to figure out how my future is going to look like, and having no clue how am I going to do that, not even understanding that it takes time until you're able to figure that those things, and you can't force the future before you even understand your present. And that standing there on a bridge that is so grounded and still, and looking at those blue sky and the ocean and the river, and it was just like, calm down, it's okay, everything is going to be okay. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but now it's a moment that you can just be with yourself rather than designing or trying to figure out what you enforcing the future.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, but at the same time, because I'm very similar, but I think at the same time, it's very critical to actually be in the space prior to where you are asking all of those questions. You are seeking all the answer, all those answers. And sometimes you can almost be driving yourself mad
Yeah,
in doing so because you're going in circles and you just can't seem to find the way. But I
yeah,
think it's that leads you to the moment of revelation, right? Because I don't think like deep moment of revelation come if there's not maybe some turmoil around finding those answers. And trust me, I hate those struggles. I hate those moments of turmoils. But I think it makes the moment of revelation so much, sweeter and amazing. And, to me as a person of faith, that's like God working and finally answering the prayer or give me the clarity that I'm seeking. And,
hmm,
there's such significance to being on a bridge and because it connects things, and
it
you said,
connects, yeah,
yeah, because you said, you were looking at your past, present, and future, and a bridge, does that. It connects those things. And when you can see, water, land, air, sky, it's like all of, your senses are,
yeah,
everything is coming together, and all those questions, were kind of this bring trying to bring elements of everything together, and you find yourself in that place for the first time. It's such an incredible, that's why
yeah,
it's such a powerful story.
yeah. And I didn't, it's, and I have to say, okay, so it wasn't like, it probably was somewhat of a spiritual moment, and it took me years to go for my, to get into spirituality, um, which I think I realized a few years ago. But I think what was strong in that moment is that just be be with the sky and the water, and you still not ready for the answers. It took me years later to find the answers. And I think part of why I love to share my story is that people believe that, okay, now she tells us that that was the moment of revelation. No, it wasn't, but it was the first time that I was experiencing quiet. It's I think there is difference even between quiet and stillness, right, and peace. There was just like no chattering in my brain, in my planning, in my looking to why am I not back in my past, how my future is going to look like, what's going on with me that I can't enjoy the present, right? There are all these different things happening there, exhausting me to death. And that was a moment that I could just calm down and be still and allow myself to have a moment of quiet. And that was the ability, that experience, that each time when I come to Brooklyn Bridge, I can be with that Noa early in her relocation journey, and connect with her, having compassion for her, and having that moment of stillness. And and at least for me in this story, it's not about revolution or revelation, or that was a moment that changed my life. It was just a very important moment for me to learn that I can also find peace, because
Well, I would say that in itself is a
yeah.
revelation. I mean, the answer, learning to find peace, learning to find stillness is, I mean, that's a revelation. If, because it sounds like you'd been living a life of being very assertive, very, you went after everything that you wanted in your career, and you accomplished a lot of big things early on in life because of your pursuits.
Mhm.
And so in all of that time, you probably never learn that you can be still, you can be in the present, you can find the joy in that moment. So that's a massive thing to learn in,
Yeah.
in an event that everything, this is why I love storytelling. It's why the background matters, because the background brings the perspective of what that first time, what that moment meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and it can be so unassuming, and that's what people think. You got to have these big things happen, and that's when, that big huge thing happen is when, there's a shift, there's a change in your life. And no, it for you, it's standing on that bridge, and you say, you when, going back to Brooklyn and going back on the bridge, so you can find that moment. But the truth is,
Mhm.
your brain only needs to remember the
Yes.
story, only
It's
needs to
so
remember
true.
that to find
Yeah.
yourself back, so that if there's madness around you, you can close your eyes, find yourself back on the Brooklyn Bridge, and that what that meant for you, and then how much, that, and again, I don't want to put word in your mouth, but if we continue to pull the thread on that, we can probably find how that ability to do that, has had a huge impact, because you employ it to teach your clients to do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
So it taught you
Yeah.
a new skill that you
And that's
can.
why, yeah, that's why I'm saying that I'm not sure it's, that moment, it was revelation in a way that I had that experience. But today, when I look at it from understanding a lot of things that I didn't understand then, um, those are exactly the learnings that I'm teaching today, the clients I work with. I can say now, reflecting on that moment, that exactly what you said is that I was so focused on the doing. And that's what we learn. We learn to move from actions. And there was not a lot of attention to emotions and thoughts. And when I moved to the US, as you said, that aggressiveness was like, I want to create what I had in Israel. I want to replicate what I have there and have it here. And it didn't work for me. And I fought it for years, almost 5 years after that Brooklyn Bridge experience. That I'm saying, it wasn't like, okay, I learned something, I'm going to implement that. I needed to do so many other mistakes and learn it the hard way, that I can look back and say, oh, that's what the universe was trying to tell me, and I didn't listen then. And I had to go for it again and again and again, until I got into that place that I learned how to engage my emotions and my
Yeah.
actions, so I can see new results. And for me, that moment was like, here you go. That's your first experience of bringing emotions, thoughts and actions together, that you can have that experience of peace. If I was smarter then, I would get that, learning and maybe implement it. But I had to go through 5 years of fighting everything and anything that I could understand that.
Yeah.
But definitely.
I,
going through that,
yeah.
I enjoy doing this work with my clients because I know I can save them a lot of time of fighting all those things, and move with them rather than against them, or sometimes using new ways of being, as I
Yeah.
say, rather than using the old actions that will not serve them anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you mentioned that, because I mean it aligns with, I mean, that's literally like my mission when I talk about raising human potential, is breaking those loops. And you know, now you can go back and identify that moment, but it took another 5 years, right? And we could evolve a lot faster if we were more mindful
Listen.
and conscious and listen. Like, I've just been taught something, what does it mean? Right. And then you can go out and reach out to expert and coaches to help you figure that out, or, internalize it, pull it apart, make sense of it. And that's why journaling is so powerful,
Yeah.
journaling through it and trying, you know, something significant has just happened to me. But the thing is, we keep moving. Like, life is very
Yeah.
magical, and it gives us, these amazing moments, and we just keep on moving, and
Yeah.
we don't pay attention to them. And then it takes a lot longer. And then in foresight, you can go back and say, oh, oops.
Yeah, so I kind of like play with that in my book, and I say that we move from aware less, and you can hear that in my story. I was aware less. I was moving from my actions, as you say, in those loops with myself, thinking that what worked before will work in my new situation, and it was just not going to work. But I kept fighting that. So I was aware less until there was the moment of really like big fail, that I said to my husband, okay, I'm done. I'm done forcing having my past on where I am today, and it's time for me to move on. And that's where I stopped forcing the future on myself and just started blogging and telling a lot of different stories with a lot of humor and engaging emotions and thoughts. It wasn't like, like miserable stories. They were like really fun stories, and people liked that and start connecting with me and reminded me that I am resourceful. And then they asked me to coach them. So that's the moment I stopped forcing the future on myself. And that's why for me, the Brooklyn Bridge is so important, because it's really, I was so hanged to my past, and I was forcing my future to be the same. And that's why I was so stuck. I was not present. I was not present with my kids. I was not present with my life. And I was miserable in a way. I was not depressed, but just miserable. And that moment when I surrendered and was willing to, and was willing to say, okay, I'm just letting my future to be whatever, that's when things started showing up for me. And that blogging, just and doing that for fun, as now I understand that it was probably some emotional outlet, is what made people connect with me, because the
Yeah.
emotions and the thoughts were real. And I actually used a new way of doing that I have never used before, which was writing. I wanted to write for years, and I put it to the side, and suddenly it just exploded. And I started telling stories, right, in a different way. And that's where it's that the connection starts. And I believe in those moments, people remind you how resourceful you are. And then I was able to bring myself back, and bring everything, the actions and the emotions and the thoughts,
Yeah.
and also new beliefs that I am capable, that I lost. I felt
Yeah.
like I'm not able to change. It's kind of like I can't have it again. But that was where, so for me, that metaphor of the bridge is, I was holding to my past so strongly, forcing my future, and I was not being able to be present, and just stop forcing really created for me the future. So for me, this bridge is a metaphor to so many different things, that
Yeah.
I am so connected to it in so many different ways. And every time I go there, no matter what's the weather, I'm just full of joy in that
That's great.
space.
Yeah. And
Mm,
there are many takeaways from your stories. And I think for everyone, just, you know, go back into your life and find that story, find that moment that has a defined, because everybody has it. I put all the money I have, all the money that I've ever earned, and bet that
yeah.
everyone has one or multiple of those stories. You just don't remember them. You haven't paid attention to them. But if you go back and you start thinking, you will have those moments. And another thing about your story, as you're talking about it, it's not, because life and self-development, it can get complicated because
Mhm.
it's not the same for everyone.
Right.
And you have to find what it is for you. So one of the thing is, people will say, don't look into the past. Well, you have to look into the past. A lot of the answers are in the past
Yeah.
because you didn't realize you had an answer. Now, a lot of times you have to let things go from the past in order to be able to move forward. And it might not be the same thing for you as it is for me, as it is for Noah. So you
Yeah.
have to identify what that is for you, which means you have to know your story, your stories, and who you are. And it is about awareness, about understanding yourself, your life. Because Noah mentioned, there's being resourceful is a quality from her past that made her successful, that she brought into her future, that helped her be resourceful once she let go of having to be in control. And that's what worked for her. So it's like, okay, there are qualities about who you are. There are things that you've done that have proven that what works for you, that you can bring into your future if you're stuck on what to do next and what's the right thing for you. And you're asking yourself these 100 questions, and hopefully you're listening to this, and it is going to be a trigger that's going to get you to go do new things, to explore a revelation and discovery, as well as look into your past to find some of those answers. So, all while focusing and living in the moment. So, that's complex. and but
Yeah.
it's life, it's living, and it's being part of that magic. And trust me, as I'm saying all of this, I'm having it sink in, because I've had a lot of struggles between everything that I've done in the past, what I imagine the future to be, and what do I need to be doing today that is the right thing. So even when we understand these concepts, you can still struggle through them. So take
Yeah.
comfort in that, because if somebody says they have it all figured out, they're lying. So
I really want to meet them. I really want to
yeah.
meet them. But here is something, you were talking, and there are lots of stories that I tell many times because I'm a speaker. Okay. So I'm being interviewed to different podcasts and stand on stage, and I tell stories to my clients and my kids. And I think what's interesting about the concept of this first story is that when people listen to you, and every time I tell my story to a different person, they always teach me something about myself. It's not just I am teaching other people, they are teaching me so much about myself. You listening to me, you added something that I didn't think about. So I believe that it starts a conversation, and thank you for that. It's very, very inspiring to see the process, because it those conversations, those sharing, that sometimes we say, that story is not important. When we started this conversation, I asked my husband, what should I talk about? That's not important. That's right. You start really diving inside, and there are those limiting beliefs that my first story is not that important. But what we miss by doing that is that when we don't tell the story, we don't realize where are our strengths and where are our qualities and where are our challenges and where are the things we still need to keep working. As you know, I see myself, as you say, there are some things that I struggle. It's not like my journey ended. I keep learning all the time. I call it the illusion of awareness. We think we get there and we know everything, but there is always something we can learn. So thank you for that, because it really is a process that helps people get to know themselves better. But they have to start by the willingness of telling their
Yeah.
story and letting go of the, but it may be not that important. Um, so
I
thank
love
you.
it. Thank you. And thank you for sharing a story and adding that because it's so true. Like one, there's some people when they'll tell a story, but they keep switching it to you statements, right? So they're making their assumption who they're talking to, what they
Hmm.
should get from their story. And that might not be what the person wants to get from the story, and then it
Hmm.
misses like the entire point. And you told a story from you, like what it was for you, what happened to you. Saw myself as you, and and I could feel all of the emotions and everything. And then there's part of me that becomes part of that. And then like, oh, this is what I'm getting from her story, but I'm also getting a much deeper understanding of you because you were willing to open up and be vulnerable and share the story in the first place. And you're right, and it starts a deep meaningful conversation of heart to heart connection
Yeah.
where we can both open up about the topics that were brought up by the story. And then if we had more time, then I could get to like more of like a similar event that happened to me, and so on and so forth. And that's why storytelling is so powerful.
Hmm.
And something that I want obviously teach others how to do, because it elevates the way that we communicate with each other, the way we understand one another. And we need that in order to raise the human potential as a whole. Like we need to get deeper into things, have a deeper understanding, deeper connections, and not get caught up in the drama, the madness, and the things that, quite frankly, don't add any value to our lives or to our development.
And I will just add one thing. You do this thing on social media, and I love it because, at least from part of my why, is to share my messy stories. If people see my videos on LinkedIn, they are after I run. So I don't look like this. I am messy. I am sweaty. I have my red cheeks. I don't have makeup. So it's real. And I think we see too much of the beauty of the story. And I love that those stories allow to bring the messiness, right? It's not just the beauty, but they are it's all inside. And sometimes we have that tendency, not sometimes, but we have the tendency to compare ourselves, and what we compare to that beautiful picture of someone having a travel, but they don't tell you that they lost the suitcase and they fought with the husband and the kids and and all the other stuff that you don't see in the story. And I just want to applaud you for doing that on social media, that people will see that maybe Noah now published a book, works with executives and social leaders, but she was stuck for 5 years, for God's sake. She didn't see results. She was upset with herself. And that's very important to me, because we see too much of the sparkly moment, and we miss that there is a lot of challenge in our journey, and that's okay, and it's part of our growth and how we are looking at that. And what I missed when I was still standing there on the bridge was that there are lots of learnings that I can learn from each experience and become a better person. And it took me a few years to do a lot of mistakes and fight everything, that I will be able to start listen and pay attention. um, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome. All right. Before we move into the first time lightning round, how can people get in touch with you?
So you can find me on all social medias, different places with Noa, Noa. There is no H, Noar coach, Noa, Noar coach, or my website, Noa Ronen Coaching. Or if you're curious to learn more about my book, Beyond Leadership from Awareness to Awareness, in the middle there is Aware Mess. It's on Amazon. So just look for my name and you will find it. And I always invite just a conversation, just like we both. So if you reach out just to have a conversation, I promise I will reply, respond, and keep the conversation with you.
All right, awesome. Okay, it is now time for the first time lightning round. So the way it works is I'm going to ask Noah 10 different first time options.
Oh
If
my
it's
gosh.
something that you've done before, then you say up. So similar to being on the 365 First Challenge app. So if you've done it before, you swipe up. If you've never done it, not interested, then it's left. If you've never done it, would like to do and add it to your list, then it's right. Ready to
Okay.
go?
I hope
All
so.
right.
You will help me.
Absolutely. Okay, first one is go antique shopping.
That's the I want to. And the first, okay. So I did that already,
You've done
or
that and it's up.
okay.
So you've done that before. Do you
Yeah.
remember your first time you went antique shopping?
Probably somewhere upstate.
Okay.
New York. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Next one. Ever had your car towed?
Down, it means that I didn't do that. I didn't
If you,
listen to the
yeah,
instruction.
never done it, not interested, then it's left. Right. So if you never
Ooh,
had your car towed, then I'm sure you don't want to. So that's a left.
left, yeah.
All right. Own a fish tank.
No, and
That's a
don't want to.
left.
Yeah.
Don't want, never had one, don't want to. Dance the tango.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, you've done
yeah.
it before. When what was your first tango?
I when I was in college, I went on salon dancing and loved it so much. So I every Monday, it was Monday 7 p.m. I would get to the dancing floor and dance. So that was
Oh,
my fun. Yeah,
very nice.
I
Okay.
wish my husband would like to dance, but he doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Write poetry.
Mm,
Left. Never
yeah,
done it. Not interested.
no.
Clean out the gutters. Left.
Someone else is doing that for us. Say no.
Never done it. Not interested.
Not a DIY out, like houseworks person. I'm sorry. Yeah, to all the
Okay.
people who love that, I don't.
All right. Next one is knit. Up.
Yeah, yeah, did that when I was young. My grandma taught us, my sister and I. I don't have the patience, so I didn't stick to that. But my sister was really good at it, like my grandma. Yeah,
All right. Grandma taught you how to knit. Excellent.
yeah.
Play the guitar.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. So you want me to tell, or you
Yeah.
just do? Yeah. So my brother played the guitar, and we shared the room. I'm the youngest of four, and he taught me how. So I was really small, and my fingers were, it's very complicated. So I'm a piano person. It's like
Uh,
cat and dogs. So I'm on the piano
all right. So your
side. So
brother plays the
tried,
guitar
but it
and
was
you play
like
the guitar.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't working out.
But yeah, I when my older sister left the house, I told my father that I cannot fall asleep because my brother is practicing his guitar, and that's how I left the room and got a room of my own. So there was something good about the guitar story. Yeah,
Worked out for you.
Yeah. You see, I was an influencer.
All right. Next one. Donate blood. Done
Yeah,
that.
but not interested to do it. I faint. Everything relates to blood work. So when I was in the Israeli Navy, and I know, right? You were also in the Navy,
The Marine
right?
Corps. Yeah.
Marine. So we had to donate blood, and it didn't end up well. I fainted. As always, it's just like I'm not sure why, but it's a genetic thing with our family. So
Oh,
I
all
did that, don't
right.
like that. But my husband is the one donating for our family.
For the
So
family.
thank you,
Yeah.
husband. You see, I said something and now I said something else about him.
Done it before, but did not work out. Not doing it again.
No,
Okay.
no.
The last one is take a Zumba class.
Yeah. Do I
All
want to
right.
do it again? Not really.
Oh, you like to
I'm
dance. You didn't like the
I
Zumba?
love, yeah, I tried that, but it didn't fit. I'm not good, even though I have the good Mediterranean, bat for that, if I can say that on Facebook Live. I don't have the move. So I did kickboxing and ballet bar. So I do dance. I dance with my kids, but
All right.
I
Okay.
don't, I don't have my best move with
Okay.
Zumba.
Zumba. Fair
I have a
enough.
better kickboxing move, apparently. Yeah.
Okay, so that concludes the first time lightning round. The last question is, how have you been making the best out of the current situation with the pandemic?
Um, I actually, going back to our conversation, I think one of the things that I challenged myself is to let go of the what's next, because it got back with, having your own business, you always like, what's next, what's next. And after a long phase where my husband was traveling a lot, and a lot of, having my own business, speaking, traveling, my husband traveling a lot, so it was very intense, not in the way I wanted. So actually, husband in the house, kids in the house, there is a lot of gratitude to where I am right now. And I challenged myself to be, rather than focusing on what's next. And it brings a lot of peace and, again, stillness into my life. So I truly enjoy this. And I'm not a fan of what's happening, but there is something good that's happening to us as a family. And I embrace that. I embrace, my kids are teenagers. One is moving to college next year. We are waiting to see where he's going to go. I'm really embracing being present with my kids, with my husband, with my clients, podcast interviews, which I used to speak on in conferences, and I actually fell in love with shifting into podcast interviews and having heart to heart conversations rather than having a show. So I really find that I enjoy that more. So that's where I am. Really, I know we are very close to Thanksgiving, but I feel grateful to where I am right now with my life. So I'm learning to enjoy the right here, the right now, in a different way than I shared with the Brooklyn Bridge story. So we actually,
Uh, Went full circle.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's wonderful, Noah. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today and sharing your stories and telling us more about you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I appreciate that and everything you do.